A little girl was handcuffed by the police just because she was riding a bicycle in ragged clothes. Suddenly, a millionaire appeared, and then a tragedy happened. Ring, ring, ring. The alarm clock sputtered into the silence like an old kettle starting to boil. It wasn't a digital chime or a song from the radio. Just that hard, rasping ring of a wind-up bell that sounded more like warning than invitation. Emily blinked twice at the ceiling. The fan above her turned in slow, lazy loops, doing more to stir the dust than push any air. She sat up and rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. Her nightshirt had twisted around her ribs from the heat. On the dresser, her socks were folded in the shape of small fists, their elastic worn thin, and her toothbrush rested inside a cracked mug with a faded cartoon bear. Emily dragged herself toward the window, gripping the hem of the curtain, a patchwork of denim and faded cotton stitched together from her mother's old uniforms. She pulled it aside and let the world in. A garbage truck hissed down the alley. A dog barked from somewhere too far to be seen. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor cursed quietly, trying not to wake their own kids. Emily didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. It was just another day. Anna Carter came through the front door like a wind-beaten tree, her shoulders bent forward, uniform damp at the collar from sweat and chemical cleaner. Her boots thudded twice before she kicked them off and leaned against the wall, catching her breath. Emily looked up from the floor. "You're home early." 15 minutes, Anna replied, sliding down next to her daughter, untying her hair with a quick, practiced gesture. "Just long enough to eat and pretend I didn't mop up 6 bathrooms last night." She pulled a lunchbox from her bag. Not insulated, not fancy. The rice was cold, but the scrambled egg had held its shape. Anna opened it and placed it on the floor between them. No plates. They shared straight from the tin. Emily ate slowly, stealing glances at her mother's face. Anna noticed. "I know," she muttered, mouth still half full. "I look like I got in a fight with bleach and lost." "You don't look bad," Emily said quietly. Anna reached over, thumb brushing a grain of rice from Emily's chin. "I'll be back by 8. Don't go far. Just stay where people can see you." "I know." Anna stood, stretched until her back popped. "Chloe's coming by, right?" Emily nodded. "Okay then." She kissed her daughter's head quickly, as if to make up for all the kisses she would miss later, then disappeared into the bathroom with the door clicking shut behind her. When Chloe arrived, her knobby knees were already scraped from some adventure earlier that morning. She was dragging an old bicycle, paint chipped, one pedal held on with duct tape. It was blue once, now mostly rust. "She said you could try it," Chloe explained, referencing her older cousin who'd gone to college and left the bike behind like it was just another piece of furniture too bulky to bother with. Emily eyed it like a wild animal, curious, cautious. Then she stepped forward and ran her fingers along the metal. It was cool in the morning air, and the handlebars turned with a small metallic creak that made her heart flutter. "Is it okay if I—" Yeah, Chloe interrupted. "It doesn't go very fast anyway." "Careful, Peanut. If my mum sees that you're injured because of my bike, she'll let me eat beans for a month." Emily's smile climbed on. Her feet didn't reach the ground from the seat, so she hovered, tipping slightly as she pushed forward. The rubber on the back tire peeled like old skin, and the front wheel wobbled. Still, the movement thrilled her. She pedaled toward the mouth of the alley, where the sun cast a long shadow of her tiny frame onto the cracked pavement. She circled past the convenience store, where Mr. Alvarez, mid-60s, beard always half-shaved, leaned against the doorway, smoking. He gave her a half-wave. "There she is, the little rocket." Emily didn't wave back, but she rang the bell. The sound was weak and flat, more rust than tone, but Mr. Alvarez grinned all the same. She rode past Mrs. Susan, who was hosing down her front steps while humming an old gospel tune. Her dress was wet at the hem, and her hair was tied in a scarf the color of ripe oranges. She straightened up when she saw Emily. "That your bike now?" she called. "I'm just borrowing it by Chloe." "Well, you borrow like you mean it, honey." Emily felt the wind, thin but real, rush past her ears. She stood on the pedals for a moment, letting momentum carry her a few feet before she slowed again. Her legs weren't strong enough for speed, but she didn't need speed. She needed space. In that moment, the alley wasn't just an alley. It was a path to somewhere else. It was clean air and open light, and the illusion of distance. She turned onto the narrow sidewalk where the concrete buckled like broken teeth. Above her, power lines tangled like spider webs. She didn't notice. She didn't need to. She kept pedaling. Back at home, Anna emerged from the bathroom, hair damp and brushed, wearing a clean shirt and the same old jeans. She grabbed her bag, counted her tips from the last shift in silence, then paused. She walked over to the window and looked down just in time to see Emily rounding the corner, wind catching in her hair. Anna didn't smile, but her jaw unclenched. For a brief moment, she let her shoulders drop. Then she locked the door and went back to work. The pigeons came earlier now. That was the only thing Liam really noticed about mornings anymore. They arrived before the shops opened, before the buses began to grunt and wheeze up Mission Street. Dozens of them, pecking at crumbs beneath the taco cart that hadn't opened yet, flapping their wings in irritation as if the world itself were late. He drove slowly, one hand resting on the wheel, the other tapping his thigh in time with the rhythm of the turn signal he never used. The streets were quiet, at least on the surface. But Liam never believed in quiet. Quiet just meant the noise hadn't shown itself yet. He passed the old couple near 23rd and Hampshire. Their food cart, half rust and half stainless steel, was barely keeping upright on its wheels. "Here he comes again," the old man muttered without looking up. "The vulture," said the wife, louder than necessary. "Circling for trouble like it feeds him. His salary is paid with the tax money we pay, and we have to bow down like beggars." Liam's eyes flicked to the side mirror, but he didn't stop. He never did. He'd heard worse. Still, the words stuck. His gaze moved methodically from sidewalk to stoop, from alley to rooftop. Garbage cans, discarded bikes, loitering shapes. He didn't scan like a man curious. He watched like a man hunting. Then he saw her, a little girl, alone. On a bike that didn't fit. The frame wobbled every few feet. One handlebar was wrapped in duct tape. The seat was too high for her legs, and her clothes looked more like sleepwear than streetwear. She rode in loose circles, her sandals flapping with every turn of the pedal. Liam narrowed his eyes. He pulled to the side with a quiet roll, cut the engine, and got out. The door closed with a solid thump that seemed to make the sidewalk flinch. "Hey," he called out, walking toward her. "Hey, kid, where'd you get that bike?" The girl looked up, startled. She stopped pedaling, but didn't dismount. My friend, Chloe." Her voice cracked at the edges, soft and confused. "Your name?" Liam asked, stepping closer. "Emily," she whispered, as if it might be wrong. "What's your last name?" She blinked, her mouth opening, then closing. "Carter," she managed. "Where do you live, Emily Carter?" She turned in her seat slightly, pointing. Just there, that brown door." The girl looked down the street. The front of the house was barely visible through the trees, but Liam had already made up his mind. "Is that your bike?" She hesitated. "It's Chloe's. She said I could." "You got proof of that?" Emily looked back at him with growing panic, her hand tightening on the brake handle. Liam reached for his shoulder mic. "Unit 17, requesting status check on minor female, possibly unattended. Name Emily Carter. Appears to be without guardian." Emily's lips parted in horror. "I didn't steal it," she said quickly, her breath catching. "I swear, I didn't." Chloe said, "Off the bike," Liam said. Emily didn't move. "I said off." "I'm not going anywhere, I'm just—" Liam stepped forward, his shadow falling over her. She flinched. He reached out and gripped her arm. It was small under his hand, wiry, hot from the sun. "I didn't do anything wrong," she cried out, louder this time, twisting. "You can explain that at the station." "I don't want to go," Emily screamed, now trying to yank away. Her sandal caught on the pedal, and she stumbled. Liam tightened his grip. The little girl's face was red now, splotched with panic. She writhed with the raw fear only children can have, the kind that doesn't reason, just reacts. "Stop it! You're making this worse," he snapped, and then she bolted. She broke free, not because he let her, but because she twisted at the perfect moment. She left one flip-flop behind as she sprinted barefoot down the cracked sidewalk toward the brown door. Liam watched her go for a heartbeat. Then he swore under his breath and went after her. The porch was small, the paint peeling around the edges of the frame. Emily was banging on the door, breathless, calling out, "Mom! Mom! Please!" Just as Liam caught up and reached out again, the door flung open with force. Anna Carter stood in the frame, chest rising, eyes wide. Her hair was pinned up in a loose bun, and she still wore the grey uniform shirt from her job. The sweat had dried in uneven patches on her back. "Don't touch her," she said. "No scream, just steel." She was unsupervised, riding a bike that's likely not hers, Liam countered, keeping his voice clipped. "She was on our block with a neighbor's bike," Anna replied. Her hand stayed on her daughter's shoulder. "You scared her. You had no right." "She resisted," he said. "I have the right to detain—" "She's 5 years old." Emily pressed into her mother's leg. Her tears had stopped, but her breath still hiccuped in her throat. Liam straightened. "I'm just doing my job, Mom." "Then do it somewhere else." There was something about the light that morning. Too clean, too clear. Like the air had been scrubbed of its usual grit and smoke, leaving everything exposed. Edward Campbell leaned slightly against the leather seat, pen hovering above the margins of his notes. Today's charity event went faster than expected, and he was on his way back to the company, his salt and pepper hair showing how hard this 50-year-old man worked and how strict he was with himself. His glasses slid a little down the bridge of his nose as the car idled near a stop sign. "Nate," he said quietly from the back seat, "why are we slowing?" The driver didn't answer right away. His fingers tensed slightly on the steering wheel. "There's something," he said. "Sir, you may want to see this." Edward leaned toward the window. At first it was just shapes, movement, a woman on a porch, a man in uniform. Then the image locked in. A small girl pulled by the wrist. Her body twisted away in resistance. A mother reaching for her. The tension between them strung tight enough to hum. He opened the door before the car came to a full stop. His polished shoes struck the sidewalk with purpose. In the open air, the heat pressed down like a heavy palm. It smelled of dust, summer tar, and the edge of something wrong. He walked toward the scene, calm, direct, one step at a time. "Excuse me," he called, not raising his voice, but letting it carry. "Is there a reason this child is being restrained?" The officer turned, jaw set, the sort of posture that confused confidence with stubbornness. "She was riding a stolen bike," he said flatly. "I questioned her. She ran. I'm following protocol." Edward turned to the woman, disheveled but composed. Her shirt bore a faded municipal services patch, her eyes a war-worn clarity. The girl, small, trembling, flushed, hid behind her mother's hip, trying not to cry, failing anyway. Edward's breath slowed. He took another step forward. "Sir, I'm asking you to release the child." "I don't know who you think you are," the officer said. Edward Campbell, he replied. We fund officer mental health programs in this district, and I happen to know what escalation looks like when I see it. The officer's jaw moved slightly, but he said nothing. Edward raised a brow. And now, police's protocol is with handcuffs. Anna, the woman at the door, stepped in front of her daughter fully now. She's 5, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She was scared. That's not resisting arrest. She didn't comply. And she fled, Liam answered, reaching to the clip on his belt. His hand pulled the cuffs free with a soft, metallic snap. Anna's voice cracked open. No, don't you dare. I'm authorized to detain her until identification is confirmed, he said. She told you her name. She pointed to our door. The cuffs clicked once in the officer's hand. Sunlight flashed off the steel. Emily shrank behind her mother. Then something in her face twisted, fear tipping over into pure instinct. I didn't steal anything, she cried, eyes darting wildly between her mother and the officer. Liam stepped forward. Emily yanked the handcuffs away from Liam. Her mother also tried to pull her hand away to help her daughter. Edward was about to rush in to stop the fight, but Emily managed to escape. She turned, bolted from the porch, and ran, screaming, "Don't arrest me! I'm sorry!" Her bare foot hit the first step too fast. She stumbled, but kept going. Past the curb, into the street. A car, too fast to stop. A dull sound, like someone slapping a wet towel against cement. Then silence. Anna screamed. The kind of sound that doesn't rise from the throat. It erupts from the center of the body, primitive and unstoppable. Edward ran forward, not out of heroism, out of human reflex. Emily's small form was twisted unnaturally on the asphalt, one arm flung above her head like a broken wing. A pink plastic bracelet was still clinging to her wrist, bent and half-snapped. She's breathing, Edward said aloud, low and firm, as if speaking would keep her alive. Anna collapsed beside her, cupping the girl's head into her lap, whispering her name again and again. The officer stepped back, the cuffs still hanging loose in his fingers. Edward turned, face pale, jaw tight. You drew metal on a child, he said. A child. Liam tried to speak. Failed. Edward didn't wait for more. Nate! Ambulance now! The driver already had the phone to his ear. Around them, the street had slowed into quiet horror. People stared from doorways. Someone sobbed. A breeze lifted the cuff Liam had dropped earlier, making it clink softly against the pavement. Anna never let go of her daughter, and Edward never looked away. The back of the ambulance was colder than she expected. It smelled like plastic and latex and the breath of machines. Anna didn't notice the sweat soaking through her work shirt, or the way her knees stuck to the vinyl seat. She didn't feel the siren vibrating in her ribs, or the fact that her own fingers were slick with blood. Her daughter's blood. She only felt the weight of Emily's small frame against her chest, the shallow rise and fall of the child's breath, the occasional twitch like a dream pulling at her muscles. Kon kong sao ju, kon oi, nke me kong, she kept whispering. Mi jay roy. It didn't matter that Emily's eyes were closed. Anna still spoke to her like she was awake. She had to believe the words would find a way through. Language had been the only thing between them and the world for 5 years. It had to mean something now. Across from her, strapped in with both feet planted, sat the man she hadn't known an hour ago, Edward Campbell. His suit was crumpled at the elbows. One of his shirt buttons had come loose, but his face was still composed, unreadable, like someone who had spent his life learning how to carry the weight of things without dropping them. When the EMT asked, "Sir, are you family?" Edward didn't hesitate. "I'm responsible," he said. "She's under my care now." Anna didn't look up, but she heard it. She heard what it cost him to say it and what it meant. The rest was fast and slow at the same time. Doors burst open, lights overhead streaked past in white blinks. Voices blurred together. BP, dropping. Head trauma. Get neuro on call. But nothing broke through the dome of panic around Anna's ears until someone tried to take Emily from her arms. She resisted, just for a second. "She needs surgery," a nurse said gently, hands careful. "We'll take care of her." And suddenly, she had nothing in her hands, just air and blood, and the outline of warmth on her chest. The doors to the operating room closed with a hush of compressed air. Anna stood there, then sank slowly until the wall caught her. She sat like that, back against tile, elbows on her knees, eyes wide and unfocused. Her breathing was quiet, but ragged, like the space around her had thinned. Her hands still shook. She kept staring at them. The smudged brown skin under her nails, the blood on her knuckles. She didn't remember holding Emily that tightly. "Mom," a voice said. She didn't respond. Edward crouched beside her, not touching, not crowding, just close enough that his presence steadied the spinning. "They've got the best team working on her," he said. Anna still didn't speak. "I've covered the paperwork," he added. "The cost won't fall to you. I've signed the guarantees. Whatever she needs." Her eyes flicked to his, barely a movement. "I don't need charity," she murmured. "This isn't charity," he replied quietly. "It's responsibility." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Anna closed her eyes. She thought he was going to take her away. That's why she ran. "I know," Edward said. Across the hallway, a nurse motioned to someone behind glass. The ICU lights cast everyone in shades of artificial blue. A quiet stir broke the hallway. A woman in a blazer, slim camera bag slung over her shoulder, walked in without fuss. She didn't raise her phone. She didn't ask questions. She simply leaned on the far wall and opened a small notepad. Edward caught her eye. The woman nodded once, acknowledgement, not intrusion. "Who's that?" Anna asked, barely above a whisper. "Julia Harris," Edward said, "local reporter. She heard what happened and came to see for herself." "She going to write about this?" "She might. She's not here for spectacle." Anna looked at the floor again. "They're going to blame me, aren't they, for not being home?" "They won't. You don't know that." "I don't," he admitted. "But I'll make sure they hear the truth anyway." The hallway door opened again. This time, Edward stepped away to take a call, retreating to the far end near the elevator. Anna watched him through the glass pane in the door, his back straight, his hand firm against the phone. She didn't know his world. Men in suits didn't usually enter hers unless something was being repossessed or shut off. But this one stood there like he had decided something, like he was taking a stand she hadn't asked for, but maybe needed anyway. She turned back toward the surgery doors. Time dragged. The monitor outside the OR beeped at regular intervals. Nurses moved past with trays and charts. The hallway dimmed slowly as the sun gave up the day. But the lights above the surgery wing stayed cruelly bright, as if to deny the very idea of error or darkness. Edward returned and sat on the bench near her, not too close. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, silent again. "They said she has a fractured rib," he said softly, "and a concussion. They're stabilizing her before they move her to imaging." Anna let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know what this would have been like if you hadn't—" He shook his head. "You shouldn't have needed anyone," he said. "No mother should." She looked at him, eyes glassy now. "I've done everything I could." "I believe you." A moment passed, Then he picked up his phone again, dialed a number he knew by memory. "Patrick," he said, voice lower now. "I need you to come to General Hospital. There's a girl, 5 years old, who was nearly killed today because one of your officers escalated a misunderstanding into a disaster." He listened for a beat. "No, it's not a media stunt. It's a child. It's a mistake that nearly became a death. I need you here, not tomorrow. Tonight." Then he hung up. Anna stared at the floor. "Will someone answer for this?" she asked. "Yes," Edward said. Outside, the sky had gone dark, but inside, the surgical wing stayed lit. A space that didn't allow darkness, only precision, breath, and time. The hospital smelled like bleached sorrow, too clean to be comforting, too bright to be safe. Patrick Reynolds stepped off the elevator with his coat still buttoned and his tie only half loosened. He hadn't planned to end his day here. Then again, most reckonings never gave warning. Mark Davis followed close behind, holding a brown file folder and trying not to stare at the people lining the hallway. Nurses whispering updates, family members hunched over plastic chairs, and a mother with blood on her hands, sitting like she'd forgotten how to stand. "This way," Edward said quietly. He didn't offer a handshake, just motioned down the hall toward a small empty room near the nurses' station, the kind they used for paperwork or hard conversations. Patrick nodded. "Has anyone spoken to the officer involved?" "Not yet," Edward said. "I wanted you to see something first." Inside the room, a nurse rolled in a laptop already queued to the footage. Another screen showed a paused video taken from a shopfront camera. Mark looked between the two, his mouth set in a thin, tight line. "Go ahead," Edward said. Patrick hit play. The screen flickered. A child, a bike, a man in uniform stepping down from his cruiser. The girl's body language said everything. Stiff, unsure, shrinking. The audio was fuzzy, but loud enough to catch the tone. Sharp, commanding, impatient. Then the cuffs. Then the scream. Mark turned away first. He swallowed hard. "There's more," Edward added, switching to the second video. "This one's from the store across the street. Mr. Tran, the owner, started recording on his phone when he saw the officer raise his voice." The second video was closer. You could see the girl's eyes wide in disbelief. You could hear the panic escalate. You could see the officer, Liam, snap the handcuffs open with mechanical precision, completely missing the way the child's knees had already started to buckle. When Emily ran, the camera tilted briefly, but it caught the car, the sound, the fall. Mark closed the laptop himself. Patrick stayed silent for a long beat, then turned to Mark. "I need your eyes on this," he said. "I wasn't here. You've worked under him longer than anyone." Mark stared at the floor before answering. "He went too far." "Say that again, so I hear it clearly." Mark exhaled through his nose. "He went too far. This time, it's not just bad judgment, it's dangerous." Patrick nodded slowly. "Has there been a pattern?" Mark hesitated. "There was a woman last winter, homeless. He claimed she was trespassing behind the diner on 19th. She said she was just trying to get warm near the vent. And he zip-tied her hands behind her back and made her sit in the snow until backup came. 40 minutes. She ended up in the ER with hypothermia." Patrick's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't I hear about that?" Liam buried the report under non-urgent disturbance. Said she was aggressive. No charges filed. No one looked deeper. Patrick looked toward the hallway window where the sky was inked with night. "And the other time?" Mark clenched the folder in his hands. "High school kid, skateboarder, scuffed a cruiser's bumper in the parking lot. Liam shoved him against the hood and called it resisting. There was no video, no formal complaint, just bruises and fear." Patrick let out a sharp breath, then moved to the small folding table. He opened his own tablet and began filling out an emergency suspension order. Edward watched silently. "Liam Abbey is hereby placed under immediate administrative leave," Patrick said, signing his name with deliberate strokes. "Pending full internal investigation." Mark looked down at the ink drying on the page. "He won't take that quietly." "He doesn't have a choice," Patrick replied. "We don't serve egos. We serve the law." He folded the order in half and slipped it into an envelope. Outside, in the hallway, Julia Harris was quietly interviewing a woman with tired eyes and a firm voice. Mrs. Simmons, Chloe's mother. Chloe herself stood nearby, clutching a soft pink helmet, her lips pressed together like she didn't quite understand why people kept asking about something she already told the truth about. "She said Emily could use the bike," Julia recorded. "Did she see Emily take it?" "No," Mrs. Simmons answered, "because it wasn't taken, it was given. Emily has been my daughter's friend for a long time. They are very close. How could she steal? I mean, this is a small town, not New York or Madrid." Patrick stepped closer, watching for a moment. The camera wasn't rolling, only a voice recorder and a notepad. "Can I see your camera feed?" he asked gently. Mrs. Simmons nodded. "It's motion triggered. My husband already pulled the clip." A flash drive was offered. Julia looked at Patrick. "You're going to do something, right?" "Yes," he said. Edward approached. "I assume the next step is formal notice." Patrick nodded. "And a full report to the district board. This won't die quietly, but it will not be buried either." Edward didn't respond. He looked past them, to the ICU door still closed, still quiet. "She's still unconscious," he said. "The doctors say it's too early to know what damage was done." The weight of that truth settled in the room like dust. "We can't undo what happened," Patrick said quietly, "but we can make damn sure it doesn't happen again." He looked to Mark, who met his gaze with something steadier than before. "Let's go deliver the order." Edward didn't move. He remained at the window, unmoving, watching the light above Emily's door, waiting for it to flicker for any sign of movement. Patrick didn't interrupt. Some things were above words. The vending machine near the ICU clicked and rattled before dropping a pack of peanut butter crackers with a dull thud. Edward Campbell didn't usually eat snacks from machines, but it wasn't for him. He also had a paper bag from a small bakery downtown, soft bread, 2 cinnamon twists, and a peach juice box. The kind of thing his wife used to pack for their daughter before school. He hadn't bought those in years. Today, he bought 2. He balanced the bag against his hip and pressed the button for the elevator. When he reached the pediatric wing, the hall was quieter than before. The fluorescent lights hummed. Nurses moved with efficiency, but softer steps. Outside room 214, Anna sat curled up in a visitor's chair. Her eyes were closed, arms folded tight over her chest. Not sleeping, just bracing. Edward stood for a moment, then crouched to gently place the bag beside her. The paper crinkled softly. She stirred. "You don't have to." "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." Anna blinked, then nodded slightly. Her hair was tied up hastily, the strands at her temples damp and curling. Her face held exhaustion without vanity. She looked like someone who had cried until she couldn't anymore, and still kept watch. Edward took the other chair, one seat between them. He didn't lean forward. Didn't speak, right away. Inside the room, monitors blinked softly. The sound of the heart rate monitor was steady, though too slow for comfort. Emily lay still, her small body wrapped in thin blankets, one arm in a splint. Anna glanced at the window. "She hates hospitals," she said softly. Edward looked over. "Most kids do." "She thinks the smell means someone's about to leave and not come back." Anna's voice wavered. "Guess she's not wrong." He let that hang in the air. Minutes passed. The hallway emptied further. The air felt cooler, as if the building itself was trying to hold its breath. Finally, Anna asked without turning, "You ever lose someone?" Edward sat back. His hand, resting on his thigh, curled slightly. "My wife," he said, "6 years ago. Breast cancer." Anna nodded slowly. "You don't talk like someone who's moved on." "I haven't." She reached down and pulled her wallet from the hospital tote bag on the floor. From it, she took out a worn photo, creased in the middle, color faded at the edges. "He's the one I lost," she said, handing it to him. "Aaron, my husband Edward took it gently." The man in the photo had a grease-smeared shirt, steel-toe boots, and a grin that looked both tired and deeply happy. There was a little bit of Emily in his eyes. "He worked at Grey Hill Foundry," Anna said. "Died in a scaffold collapse 6 years ago. OSHA called it structural failure. The company said the insurance payout would help, but the rest of it..." Edward's brow furrowed. "Grey Hill." He tilted the photo. "That's one of mine. I mean, not mine personally, but one of our holding subsidiaries. Campbell Steelworks. We held a controlling share for over a decade." Anna blinked. "You ran it?" "I funded it, invested, oversaw restructuring, toured the sites, once or twice. I met workers, some stuck in my memory." His voice faded, eyes fixed on the photo. Then, quietly, "I think I met him." Anna's breath caught. "You knew Aaron?" Edward looked at her, something old and raw surfacing behind his otherwise composed expression. "I didn't know his name, just his face. We shook hands near Furnace 3, I think. He had ideas about safety gear, said something about the bolts above catwalks being loose on older sections." Her voice dropped. That's exactly where it collapsed. He handed the photo back, but gently, as if passing something fragile. "I didn't know what happened afterward. We lost contact with his wife on file. Legal sent letters, but no reply. Then the file was closed." Edward's hands pressed together. "We moved on. I moved on." Anna didn't speak. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know if it means anything now, but I am." She turned the photo face down on her lap. "I didn't want a payout. I just wanted to raise her away from all that. I left the town after the funeral. Thought if we started somewhere else, maybe the world would leave us alone." "You've done more than that." Anna shook her head, staring at her palms. "I'm just a cleaning shift. Double shifts when rent's due. She deserves better." Edward looked through the glass. Emily hadn't moved, but the light above her bed was dimmed now, softer. "She will get better," he said. Anna didn't argue. She just asked, "Why are you still here?" There was no pause. "Because I failed once," Edward answered. "I didn't find Aaron's family when I should have. I didn't make sure he was remembered beyond a file. I'm not here out of kindness anymore." Anna raised an eyebrow. "Then what?" He met her eyes. "Debt." For the first time, Anna gave the smallest smile. Not warmth, just acknowledgement. That they were both carrying something neither one asked for. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady again. "But don't think you owe me. Just don't leave her." "I won't." Edward stood after a moment. "I'll be back in the morning." Anna didn't answer, but she didn't tell him not to come. As he walked down the hallway, passing the pale hum of machines and the silence of too many doors, Edward felt the weight of the photo still lingering in his palm, even though he had given it back. It was no longer about doing the right thing. It was about not making the same mistake twice. The hallway outside, room 214, was quieter than usual, as if the air itself respected what had taken place behind the glass door. The hum of hospital machinery, distant elevator dings, and nurses' clipped footsteps all softened near that room. Grief had a way of demanding silence. Anna sat by the window, slicing a pear into small, uneven cubes. The blade wasn't sharp enough, and her hand shook slightly, but she kept going. Cut, slide, cut again. She didn't need to look at Emily to know her daughter hadn't moved. Inside the room, Edward stood near the end of the hospital bed. He wasn't reading, wasn't working, just watching the monitor, listening to the slow beep-beep that had become the most precious sound in his world these days. Emily lay still, wrapped in a sea of white sheets and sensor wires. Her eyelids fluttered only now and then, like she was dreaming of something far away. A nurse passed in the hall and nodded toward the glass. "He's here." Edward straightened. "Let him in," he said quietly. Liam entered with his hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket. No uniform, no badge. His walk was slower than usual, shoulders hunched slightly, not from age, but from weight. Edward didn't speak, he only stepped aside. Liam looked at the small figure on the bed. His jaw tensed. His gaze didn't linger. It hurt too much. He turned toward Anna. She kept slicing the pear. "I came to say I'm sorry," Liam said, voice low, cracked. "I didn't mean for—" She set the knife down with a soft click. "You don't owe me anything," she said, not looking up. "I do," Liam said. "Then don't make it about you," she replied. For a second, no one spoke. Only the beeping filled the space. "You're not here to ask for forgiveness," she continued. "You're here to live with what you did. So do that." Quietly. Liam opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded once and stepped back. Before leaving, he looked toward Edward, then at Emily. He stood still for 3 long breaths. Then he turned and left, without a word. Earlier that morning, Edward had driven out to the north side of the city. A red brick house with vines curling around the fence welcomed him. It had been months, maybe longer, since he'd visited. Helen Campbell answered the door before he knocked. "You finally remembered your mother exists," she said, though her eyes softened almost instantly. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks." "I haven't," he replied. They sat in the living room, the old floral couch giving slightly under his weight. "I did something today," Edward began. "Something I thought would feel right, but it didn't." Helen raised an eyebrow. "I watched a man fall apart under the guilt of nearly destroying a child's life," he said, "and I didn't feel better. I felt empty." "You want justice to come with closure," she said gently, "but sometimes it just comes with paperwork and silence." Edward ran a hand through his graying hair. "How do I know I'm doing the right thing?" Helen set her tea down. "By not walking away." He looked down at his hands. She leaned in. "Listen to me, Edward. You were raised on the belief that actions speak louder than anything else. So show up. Stand still. Stay present. That's more than most people ever do." He nodded. "And when you're there, don't talk too much. Don't try to fix everything in a sentence. You don't need to be forgiven. You just need to mean it." Edward sat back. "I don't even know what I'm trying to make right anymore." "You're not trying to fix the past," Helen said. "You're trying to make sure the future isn't shaped by the same failure." Back at the hospital, the room had grown dimmer. Anna returned to her seat beside the bed, offering a small cube of pear to Emily's parted lips. The child didn't respond. Still, she whispered, "It's sweet. Your favorite." Edward stood near the window, watching the streetlights flicker on outside. The hospital lights reflected his outline back at him, older now, wearier. "I brought cinnamon bread," he said. Anna glanced up. "You always bring food?" "It's all I can do." A silence settled, but this one felt less sharp. Anna folded her arms, then looked up. You said once your wife passed? Edward nodded. 6 years. Breast cancer. She was lucky, Anna said. He looked at her. To be loved like that, she clarified. To be missed that way. Edward didn't respond right away. Then, she was the one who made me softer. Anna tilted her head. You don't strike me as soft. I'm not, he said. Not anymore. She pulled out a folded photo from her hospital bag. The edges were worn, a faint fingerprint smudge across the bottom. This was my husband, Aaron. He took it with both hands, looked at it for a long time. I know this man, he said slowly. I shook his hand once, at a steel site in Greyhill. He died there, Anna said. The scaffolding collapsed. They said it was a fluke. I funded that plant, Edward said. Never knew who died. You do now. Edward closed his eyes. That's not enough. No, Anna replied, but it's a start. She took the photo back. You're not helping us because you're kind, are you? She asked. Edward shook his head. No. Then why? Because I missed my chance once, he said, and I'm not missing it again. Anna didn't smile, but something in her expression softened. You don't owe me anything, she said again, quieter. I owe him. He stood. I'll be back tomorrow. She nodded, eyes on her daughter. When the door closed, Anna looked down at the untouched pear slices. Her hands were still trembling, but her grip was steady. And though Emily hadn't moved, the room no longer felt helpless. It felt held. The office at the back of the newspaper was quieter than usual. A single desk lamp cast a small circle of light over Julia's notes, surrounded by sticky tabs, sound recordings, and 2 different kinds of cheap coffee she hadn't touched. The hospital corridors, the shaking voice of a woman folding laundry at midnight, the sound of a plastic bracelet clinking against pavement. These things didn't leave her. She didn't type yet, not until she had listened to everyone. Her recorder crackled, and then came Chloe's voice, soft but clear. I told Emily she could ride my bike. She liked the bell. It was all rusted, but she said it sounded happy. Then Mrs. Simmons, voice tighter. They could have just asked. We're not strangers. We're neighbors. Julia's pen moved slowly. She had learned long ago that the truth didn't need embellishment. You just had to stay long enough for people to trust you with it. Next, she'd gone to talk with Mr. Tran from the corner store. She was crying. He didn't ask. He just grabbed. I saw it. His hands had trembled as he passed over the phone footage. That little girl. She looked like a rabbit caught under a boot. There was a kind of anger in his voice that made Julia write in all caps. No one said her name except her mother. She'd also spoken to Miss Elkins, Emily's preschool teacher. She colors sunflowers in purple, Miss Elkins said, because she says yellow ones look too happy. That tells you everything. That night, Julia stayed up writing the piece. No commentary, no metaphor, just a headline and a question. A cuff and a 5-year-old. What protocol protects a child from fear? It ran online at dawn. By noon, it had been shared across 3 counties. By dusk, it was in print, and by nightfall, it had a nickname on local radio, the Campbell Street Incident. Julia didn't return to the hospital until the next day, not with a camera, not with a press badge, just a folded copy of the paper and a quiet sense of presence. She found Anna in the hallway, her hair tied up but frizzed from stress, her clothes clean but wrinkled, like she had forgotten what rest felt like. Julia offered the paper without a word. Anna took it with both hands. The 2 women stood there, nothing dramatic between them, no hug or tears, just shared oxygen. You're not alone anymore, Julia said softly. Anna looked down at the headline, then nodded. Thank you. In the following days, Julia's inbox flooded. Law students offered free legal aid. Community organizers asked how to deliver meals to room 214. A retired civil rights lawyer offered to draft a formal inquiry into police protocol. Churches donated toys and notes handwritten by children. One note said, in crayon, "Dear Emily, I'm 5'2". I hope you can ride again soon. My bike is red. Yours can be purple if you want." It made Anna cry harder than anything else had. The streets of the neighborhood began to murmur with new energy. For years, it had been quiet. Too quiet, Julia had thought. The kind of quiet that came from learned helplessness. But now, people talked. An online petition reached 10,000 signatures in 48 hours. At the bakery near 19th, a jar labeled "For Emily" filled faster than the cash register. Most surprisingly, Mrs. Lee, the old woman who never answered her door, walked into the precinct with a box of printed emails and said, "This officer scared my grandson last year. Nobody listened. Maybe now they will." The city council scheduled a hearing. The department reopened 3 past complaints against Officer Liam Abbey. And someone, Julia never learned who, spray-painted a sentence across the brick wall behind the station. "You can't cuff fear." Back in the hospital, the world moved slowly. Emily remained unconscious. Anna spoke less and less, but stayed alert, keeping vigil like a soldier beside her daughter's bed. Julia visited again, only once more. This time, she left something else, a black and white photo, framed. It was Emily, taken by a neighbor 2 months before the accident. She stood in front of the mural wall near her school, one hand holding her backpack strap, the other shading her eyes from the sun. She wasn't smiling. She was staring into the light, like she was trying to understand it. "She's real," Julia said. That's all the article needed to show. Anna reached for the photo slowly, like it was glass. She said nothing, but her fingers traced the edge of the frame for a long time. When Julia left, she didn't look back. And out on the street, where kids had begun chalking hearts and suns onto the sidewalk near the hospital gate, the silence that once defined the neighborhood had been replaced with footsteps, voices, and the steady murmur of people remembering what it meant to be heard. 9. The sun filtered through the gauzy curtains of the Campbell house, casting light that was too soft to match the heaviness in Edward's chest. He sat across from his mother in the living room, untouched tea cooling between them. The silence wasn't tense. It was waiting, like the moment before a string snaps. "I met Aaron's wife," Edward finally said. Helen didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the seam of her teacup, but something in her shoulders shifted, like a breath caught mid-chest. "Anna," he continued. "She's been raising their daughter alone. Emily, the little girl in the hospital." Helen closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "And now you know." He nodded. "I always wondered," she said quietly. "After that report came in, I asked your father once what happened to the man's family. He said the paperwork was closed. I didn't press. Maybe I should have." "I should have," Edward said. Helen looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "If you know you've already missed the first chance, don't wait for someone to hand you a second. Take it." He nodded again, firmer this time. Later that day, Edward returned to the hospital with a brown envelope under his arm. The pediatric wing felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of public attention had shifted something in the walls. Outside room 214, Anna stood near the window, speaking softly to a nurse. He waited until the nurse left, then stepped forward. "I brought something," he said. "I hope you'll consider it." He held out the envelope. Anna opened it slowly, eyes narrowing at the official header, then widening as she scanned the pages. "You want me to work for your foundation. Edward kept his tone steady. "I don't want you to be someone who gets helped. You already are someone who holds everything together. That's exactly the kind of person who should be helping others." Anna studied him for a moment. "And you think I'm just going to accept this because it's real, full salary, healthcare, hours you can control, and because you deserve it?" She didn't speak for a long time. Then she looked at the bottom of the contract and saw something else. A name, Aaron Carter, engraved in a small silver frame on the desk in the Foundation's new downtown office. She recognized the frame from the old photograph she kept in her wallet. "You had this made?" Edward nodded. "I wanted him there." Tears didn't fall. They stayed where they were, behind the wall of someone who had cried too often. But her hand, when she reached for a pen, was steady. She signed. The following week, Emily finally opened her eyes. Not with a dramatic gasp, not with a surge of movement, just a blink, then another. Anna was there, and then Edward, and then a nurse. But all Emily saw was the light through the window and the soft pink scarf wrapped around her neck. It had been left earlier that morning by Helen, who'd stopped by with only a small paper bag and a folded note. The scarf was hand-knit, delicate, uneven in places, but warm and full of intention. Stitched into the corner in faint thread was one word: hope. Edward stood in the new office 2 days later, the morning sun bouncing off the windows, casting long rectangles across the polished floor. Anna stepped inside, wearing a blouse that didn't fit perfectly, but looked like dignity anyway. She placed a photo of Emily beside her monitor. Below it, on the desk, stood the photo of Aaron in his frame. His smile quiet, eyes tired, but kind. "I didn't expect to be here," she said. "Neither did I," Edward replied. They shared a small smile, nothing wide, but honest. Later that day, a delivery came to the office, a box of storybooks, funded by a scholarship initiative Edward had quietly launched in Emily's name. Inside was a note from a teacher. "She's back in class." Drew a purple sunflower again. Said it's still her favorite. Anna held the note for a long moment. She didn't frame it, but she kept it in her drawer, right beside a copy of the contract she'd signed and a pressed yellow daisy she'd found outside the hospital the morning Emily woke up. In the Campbell home that night, Helen watched the news silently as coverage of the precinct investigation played out. Community members had taken to the streets, quietly, but together. They held signs that didn't scream. They simply asked questions. Who protects the child from the badge? Who speaks when no one else does? She turned off the television. In her lap was a ball of yarn and the beginnings of another scarf. This one would take longer, but she already knew what word she'd stitch into the corner. The sun arrived like a quiet guest on the morning of the scholarship ceremony. Gentle, steady, soft enough to make the corners of the Campbell Foundation's courtyard glow. It wasn't a grand space, not more than what used to be an old basketball court, repurposed with care. But today, it felt like a place where something right could happen. There were folding chairs set out in imperfect rows, some borrowed from churches, others with chipped paint and crooked legs. Still, they held the weight of something bigger than ceremony, resilience, and the need to show up. People came early. Some walked, others took the bus. The corner baker closed shop for the morning. Mr. Tran brought extra buns. Chloe's mother wore a blouse she hadn't taken out of the plastic wrap since her cousin's wedding, and Chloe herself wore a yellow dress and scuffed white sandals. Bar Susan came in a flowered ao dai, slow but proud, leaning on a cane. Everyone had a reason to be there, some to witness, some to support, and some because they'd never gotten the chance to say, "We see you," before. Edward stood behind the podium, just a few wooden planks raised on crates. He wasn't alone. To his right stood Emily, her dress powder blue, her scarf pale pink. Her hand was held by both Anna and Edward. Her steps were slow, still careful, but she stood. To Edward's left sat Helen, hands clasped around the same scarf she had knit with trembling fingers. Hope, stitched so faintly you had to lean close to see it. The air held its breath when Edward adjusted the microphone. He wasn't good with speeches, but this wasn't a speech. "I failed someone once," he began. "A man named Aaron Carter worked in one of the factories my company funded. He tried to make it safer. He saw the risks. He spoke up." He paused, not because he forgot the words, but because they deserved space. He died. And I didn't ask what happened next. I didn't find his wife. I didn't check if his child had food or school or anyone to fight for her. I just moved on. The silence wasn't awkward. It was understanding. Until this year, I didn't know that child's name. Her name is Emily. She's standing here with me now, and I promise all of you I will never move on from her. Somewhere near the back, Julia Harris lowered her camera. She'd been there only to record this moment, but now her hands rested on her lap. Some stories needed no more documentation. He turned slightly, crouched, and handed the certificate to Emily. It had her name in big, curling letters. And beneath it, in smaller text, Campbell Foundation full-term scholarship recipient. Emily didn't smile right away. She looked at it like she wasn't sure it was real. Then she stepped forward, just a few inches. She bowed her head the way she'd seen people do on TV, awkward, stiff, but respectful. And the courtyard broke into applause. Not the polite kind, the full-bodied, from-the-stomach kind, the kind that had been waiting in people's throats for years. Anna covered her mouth, but the tears still came. She didn't wipe them. She let them fall. And when Emily stepped down from the stage, the sun caught her face. For the first time in months, she smiled, not because she was told to, but because something inside her had finally let her. Afterward, the people didn't scatter. They lingered, they hugged, they shared food. Bar Susan gave Chloe a wrapped rice cake. Mr. Tran refilled the lemonade cups, even when no one asked. At the edge of the crowd, Helen watched quietly, her fingers pressed to the scarf on her lap. She looked tired, but at peace. Edward found Anna near the back bench, standing with her arms crossed, watching Emily show her certificate to Chloe. He said nothing at first. Then he held out a small envelope. "Something from the board," he said. "Official confirmation. The foundation office is yours to run, if you still want it." Anna opened it. Inside was the final contract, the offer already signed. Attached was a photo, Aaron's, placed into a proper frame and tagged, "Community Advisor, in memoriam." "He deserves to be on the wall," Edward said. "So do you." Anna didn't cry. She nodded once and said, "Then let's do it right this time." Weeks passed. Emily returned to school, slowly, then with more eagerness. The kids didn't tease. They surrounded her like something fragile and brave at the same time. She drew again. Purple sunflowers, of course. At her desk in the new foundation office, Anna kept 2 photos, one of Aaron and one of Emily, with paint on her cheeks, grinning. In her drawer was a handwritten note from a teacher that read, "She speaks more now." She says her favorite thing is when someone listens all the way to the end. Outside the office window, the neighborhood didn't change overnight, but it changed. Complaints were taken more seriously. Patrols grew quieter. Local kids started after-school tutoring at the foundation. Mrs. Lee hosted a community knitting group on Thursdays. Helen joined once, teaching others how to hide a message in a stitch. On the day Emily biked again, on a purple bike gifted by a donor who never left a name, the street filled with clapping. not loud. Just enough. Enough for her to know the world was still hers. And as she pedaled past the mural near her school, someone had painted over the cracked brick. Now it read, in bold white letters, "You are seen, you are heard, you are held." Emily rang her bell once. It was still a little rusty, but it sounded happy. In the quiet spaces between headlines and courtroom updates, there are lives still unfolding. Lives like Emily's, Anna's, and even Edward's. No One Left Behind wasn't a story about heroes or villains, but about how damage ripples, and how healing does too. It asked what justice looks like when apology comes too late, and what redemption means when we finally decide to stay, not walk away. At its heart, this was a story about listening, truly listening, to the voices that are usually ignored. The mother too tired to speak, the child too scared to explain, the community too used to being unheard. When someone finally hears them, something shifts, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to begin. Perhaps the most human thing we can do is to not turn away. What do you think would have happened if Edward hadn't stopped the car that day, or if Anna hadn't spoken up? And how many stories like this are happening now? In streets we pass, in lives we never notice. You don't need to answer out loud, but maybe just don't stop asking. How are you feeling right now? Whatever it is, I hope you have a happy, healthy, and meaningful day.